Now let's get to Tate.
Hmm.
So Carnell Tate chooses Ohio State. At this point, it's not a surprise. The predictions have been coming in for a few days. It was disappointing initially because, as we already said last week, both of us kind of thought he was leaning Tennessee, but you never know with these kids. And whatever he saw in Ohio State, he just liked it more. The question that you ask at this point, because I think a lot of Tennessee fans were hanging their hat on getting this kid in the fold, is this a bad sign? Should we be concerned? Because I really had all I tweeted when the predictions started coming in for Carnell Tate to Ohio State. I just said, hey, at least Tennessee tried. On to the next guy. Onward and upward. That has to be the mentality, I think. If you're Josh Heupel, you just go, damn, wish we could have got him, but this is what it is, and you move forward. And there were a lot of Tennessee fans that were like, that responded to that, and they were like, well, I really thought that we had the NIL deals and we had the money, and like, what happened here? When you see that, Zach, what happened here? Is this a bad thing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I'm not concerned about it for a couple of reasons. One is that you're going to lose. It's 5-star recruit. There's only 30 some of them in each class. There's not that many. Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Clemson, Notre Dame, USC. They're all LSU. They're all battling for these guys. LSU wanted Carnell Tate. Notre Dame wanted Carnell Tate. He's from Chicago. Notre Dame would kind of be his hometown school. They missed out on him. So did LSU. You're going to lose these battles. Alabama, they lose battles for 5 stars. Georgia loses battles. You cannot win every one of these battles. And from what we understand, what we've been told is that Tennessee made it tough on Carnell Tate. He really wanted to go to Ohio State. Like, that was always kind of where he was being led to, but Tennessee made it really tough on him to the point where they were very much in it. I mean, this was pretty much an Ohio State versus Tennessee battle for the commitment. I mean, LSU and Notre Dame were just kind of there on the fringe. And the fact that they were even in it says a lot about Josh Heupel. And I know that comes off as, well, participation trophy. I've seen some of those comments, or, oh, at least we were in it. And I get that. It's frustrating. You don't celebrate that you came in second because you didn't get him. I mean, second's as good as coming in 10th in a recruiting battle like this. But at the same time, it does show progress. It shows that Tennessee's getting in these battles that they would not have got in this time a year ago. I mean, Tennessee wouldn't have even been in the conversation for Carnell Tate a year ago. And thanks to what Josh Heupel has done at Tennessee with the wide receivers, with Velus Jones getting drafted in the 3rd round, I mean, nobody would have saw that coming before 2021. He wasn't even on the draft radar before Josh Heupel arrived. So I think players believe in what Josh Heupel's doing. You've got the NIL factor, which I'm sure there will be plenty of Ohio State fans that suggest that's the only reason Tennessee was even in this battle. And that's obviously important. It's a factor. But if you think Ohio State's not dabbling in NIL money for Carnell Tate, you're a fool. I mean, everybody is living in a world, and the NIL stuff has kind of just leveled the playing field where, okay, Ohio State's paying this money. Tennessee's, they're being watched carefully by the NCAA. We can't really get into that world. Well, now because NIL is legal, you can get into that world a little bit, and it levels the playing field, and it just comes down to where the player wants to go. And if he's from the Midwest, maybe he grew up an Ohio State fan. I don't know. Maybe he has family that I don't know the exact situation, but it's hard to compete against that stuff when everything else is equal. And if you're Tennessee, there's nothing, you cannot change where the kid's from. You can't change where he grew up wanting to attend school. Those are certain variables that are just out of your control. And I don't think that there's anything bad you can say about Tennessee or anything different that they really could have done to win this battle.
You can only make this excuse for so long if you were Josh Heupel, but I think in this particular case, it pertains in this case and in some in the past too. Recruiting is a long game. I mean, these kids get recruited when that talent shows up at whatever age, and sometimes it's like 8th grade. That talent shows up, even before that sometimes. They got recruiters on them even back then. Freshman year of high school. They're 15, 15 years old, and they're going to have recruiters on him. And Josh Heupel has only been at Tennessee for a year. And there's only so much work that you can do that's essentially catch-up work. And I think Heupel has gotten some guys where a kid was leaning to a school that had been recruiting him for a really long time, and Heupel has swooped in and gotten that kid and got him to commit to Tennessee when it was when another school had been working really hard for a long time on the kid. You win some of those sometimes. In this case, I think Tennessee was the late comer here, made an excellent case to Tate through his visits and through you would say allegedly NIL deals. Whether he was approached with any or not, we do not know. But they made their case, and they made it really strongly. And I am totally with you. Yeah, this is not a win. You didn't get the kid. You came in second, and you might as well be in 10th at that point. But for the position that Tennessee is in with a coach that is just starting his second year, you are encouraged somewhat where you go, okay, if you got in this good with this kid that ended up taking Ohio State, like a perennial powerhouse in Ohio State, like that's even that portion of it is understandable. Like Ohio State wins 11 games a year. Always. They blow it and never win national championships. But if that's where you want to play, good for you. If you want to win 11 games but not win any national championships, I'm happy for you. And so, like, I get that all the way around. They've recruited him longer. Ryan Day has been there longer to set that foundation with Tate. He's from that region. He's from, you said Chicago-ish. Like he's from that area of the country more than he's from the South. To me, it makes a pretty decent amount of sense why he's going with Ohio
And Ohio State has one of the most well-known, well-regarded wide receivers coach in the business right now in Brian Hartline, who is a monster on the recruiting trail and is a great teacher, great wide receiver developer and teacher. I mean, that's a big factor too, obviously.
I mean, you really lost out to one of the only schools outside of the SEC that I think can really compete with the SEC in terms of recruiting, NIL stuff. It's not like you lost this recruiting battle to Northwestern. This isn't something,
or even like Arkansas or Mississippi State or another South Carolina.
Those would be worse. This is a powerhouse program with tons of resources that are comparable, if not better, than Tennessee's. There are very few programs that have better resources than Tennessee does, and Ohio State might be one of them. Their fan base is just as massive as Tennessee's. They're just as crazy. And so I look at this and I go, you were right there. Next time, let's win this one. Next time, when you have more time with the kid to lay that foundation, that time that Heupel missed out on with Tate, let's win it that time. And that's you kind of go from there. It's sort of a feeling that reminds me of like the 2013 Georgia game where Tennessee lost in overtime to Aaron Murray and Georgia. And you went, that is really painful and it sucks and we lost, but we shouldn't even been in that game. And that's kind of nice to see because next year we'll get him. And it turned out a couple of years later, Tennessee did get him. And so that's kind of how you have to take it. Does it suck? Yeah, you want this kid on the team. He's a 5-star talent, and that's how you win national championships is that you get 5-star talent on your roster. But next time, let's get him. When another situation like this comes up. And this is one thing that is also a factor that makes me not too discouraged over this. Some of the other options that Tennessee has are only one of these is a wide receiver, but anybody that's going like, well, there's our chance at a 5-star. No, that's not the case. Tennessee is still in good, specifically with Shandavian Bradley, linebacker, edge rusher, Shandavian Bradley, 5-star. Francis Marajoa, 5-star offensive lineman. Hunter Osborne, 4-star defensive lineman, I believe. Some of these guys who visited this weekend, I watched a couple of interviews with Cam Seldon, who is a 4-star athlete recruited by Tennessee as a wide receiver, it looks like. He had good things to say about Tennessee. Stanton Ramel, offensive lineman, 4-star. he said, the quote that I saw is that he said Tennessee is, quote, really high up for me. That's a really good sign. So 5 stars still on the line, 4 stars still on the line. You can still get a really nice class out of this, even though you missed out on a kid who would have really been a gem in the class. Hey, onward and upward. It's what I said in that tweet. Sucks. Onward and upward. Let's go on to the next kid and see what we can get.
Yeah, there's 2 things I think fans should remember here. Is one, yes, Tennessee has to start winning more of these battles, but it's baby steps, right? I mean, you have to. You got Nico. Nobody would have thought that you're going to land a top 5 recruit when Jeremy Pruitt got fired and when they hired Josh Heupel, and everybody was questioning whether or not Heupel could win these battles in the SEC. You go out and you get one of maybe the best quarterback in the 2023 class. So you've won that battle, and that's still a huge victory, and it shouldn't be forgotten just because it happened 3 months ago. So you're starting to get in these battles, and you got to build up to it. The only way to kind of fast forward or to skip the hard work is to deceive kids and make promises that you can't keep, and that's not sustainable either. We saw it happen with Butch Jones. Yes, exactly. I mean, you don't want to do that. So I think Heupel's doing it the right way. It might not be happening as fast as some people want it to, but it's still moving in the right direction. The other thing is the fact that if Tennessee had to lose a battle for a 5-star guy of the players that you just mentioned, I would choose Tate to be the one that you lost. Not that I think he's overrated, because I don't at all. I mean, he might be the best wide receiver in the 2023 class. I think he could have a great career at Tennessee. I think he'll have a great career at Ohio State. I mean, the most wide receivers that go to Ohio State end up being drafted in the first round. I mean, I think he probably made a pretty good choice for his personal decision. But Josh Heupel doesn't necessarily need 5-star wide receivers in this offense to excel. Your 3 leading wide receivers from last season, Cedric Tillman, Velus Jones, Javonte Payton, they're all 3-star guys. None of those guys were household names before 2021. Tillman had, 8 catches in his 3 seasons before Heupel arrived. Velus never went over a couple hundred receiving yards. Javonte Payton was somebody that nobody outside of Mississippi State or the Nashville area where he's from had really heard of. And they come in and they're your 3 best wide receivers in the number 7 offense in the nation. They put up numbers. Tillman is the SEC's leading returning wide receiver. He finished number 5 in receiving yards last year in the conference, and the 4 players above him are in the NFL now. I mean, Heupel can work with 3- and 4-star guys. I mean, he doesn't have to have a player like Carnell Tate to make this offense work. So, yeah, I'd rather have the edge rusher. I'd rather have the 5-star offensive tackle committing to Tennessee. Those are the guys that Heupel really needs to land for Tennessee to take the next step in the next couple of years.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more on all those points. One of the main reasons I thought the Heupel hire could be good back then when we were, before he had ever coached a game and we were sort of weighing the pros and cons, one of the reasons I thought he could be good is because his offense tailors toward less talent. It can be really great when you plug in 5-star players, but that's true of any offense.
Yeah.
Any offense can be great with 5-star players. Look at Georgia, the Georgia Bulldogs. Their offense is, with half the talent that they have, that offense is terrible. But they have the crazy talent that they do have, and so the offense works.
They just like run the ball straight, and they
exactly
are okay, and run a slant route, and they're
Yeah, sure. If you have a literal brick wall as an offensive line, and then you have some of the best running backs in America, you can make anything work. But if you don't, I think Josh Heupel's offense, it is incredibly simplified for any quarterback. Everything is simplified for everybody. I mean, it's simplified for the wide receivers and the running backs and the offensive line. Like, it's not overly complicated. The thing that you have to get used to is the speed. And if you can get the hang of that, I mean, it's all right there. The scheme is there. Tennessee did not have these 5-star players last year and went for huge amounts of yards and tons of.
And they made Alabama look silly at times in that game. I mean, the most famous play I can't remember is the situation, but Alabama, one of their DBs is. He's looking at the sideline, looking at the middle linebacker for Alabama, kind of trying to get the defensive call. And I think it might have been Javonte Payton is blowing right by him while he's still kind of looking around. I mean, that's what this offense can do. And those are 5. I mean, those are the best defensive players in college football. at Alabama. They did some to Georgia as well, and that offense worked against that. If it works against that, I mean, you can't question it, really.
Yeah, proof's in the pudding as far as that goes. You had a lesser set of players than tons of teams and had a better offense than tons of teams, and that's the bottom line there. Not to make excuse for Heupel. I want to see 5-star players in this offense. Bring the 5-star players. You got the 5-star quarterback. That's the best start you could possibly ask for. But let's get those 5-star wide receivers at a minimum, 4-star wide receivers, and plug those guys in where we can have obviously a guy right now, preseason All-American, and I'm excited to see how that pans out this season. But am I devastated by the loss on this Carnell Tate recruitment? No, I think they'll be just fine.
It helps that we kind of had a inkling this past week that those predictions started coming in. I think it would have been a little different if we had the same feeling that we did a week ago when we recorded this, and then those predictions kind of started rolling in, and if they didn't start rolling in, and we watched this commitment and we're kind of shocked when he picks Ohio State. I think the feeling would be a little bit different today.
Yeah, we've had some time to process.
Yeah, we got that out of the way before the announcement.